All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's a great turnout. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. I'm just going to do a real brief introduction. My name is Dan Polk. I'm the Community Development Director for the city. And we're really excited to have this public meeting tonight here at this beautiful church. It's been a long time since we've had an event like this. I was just talking to Charlie about that. But what we're doing tonight is collecting information for a character overlay. The character overlay, another term for that, are design standards, right? So what do you want new construction to look like in your neighborhood, Plaza Vieja, right? Seeking compatibility. And this was an outcome of the neighborhood plan that we did. It's probably 6-7 years ago. There was a Plaza Vieja neighborhood plan, and one of the recommendations was to create a character overlay that reflects the architectural traditions of your neighborhood. And so that's what we're going to be doing tonight. We've got a number of people with us. I'm going to introduce. Michelle McNulty is our planning director. Sarah Dechter is our comprehensive planning manager. A lot of you know Sarah. We've got Mark Reavis, who's our neighborhood and historic preservation planner. I think that's all the city staff. Did I miss anybody? Nope. And then we have our consultant here from Makers, Scott. I'll let him pronounce his last name. And he's going to get us kicked off tonight. And then we've also got Bob Bengford from Seattle with Makers. He's on, I believe, virtually. So he's listening in, I believe.
Yes.
Yes. Hi, Bob. Okay, so with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Scott. Is that right? And we're going to get started. So thanks again.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Dan.
Yes.
So I'm Scott Bonjuki, and I'm an urban planner and urban designer from Makers Architecture. We're based up in Seattle, but the city was interested in hiring us because we have a little bit of experience down here in Arizona with some previous projects. And doing design standards for neighborhoods like this is something we do every day. So we thought we could really help you out. So the agenda for tonight is I'll quickly go over the project purpose and background. Dan mentioned a little bit of that. We have a section called a mirror on La Plaza Vieja, which is kind of a photo tour of typical homes and structures in the neighborhood today, along with old and new comparisons. Then we're going to break for about a 15-minute discussion. We'll try to break up into some small groups, and the staff here will jot down your ideas and sketch out your concerns or hopes for the future of the neighborhood. And then we have a series of instant polling surveys. Later we'll hand out these little button clickers, and we'll do some instant polling, and we can kind of see how you all react to different design concepts. We've got some cool 3D models of a potential duplex design, for example. And then we'll wrap up with kind of the next steps and where the project will go from here. So I think you heard everyone on the project team. So we've also had one of our other staff, not here tonight, is Ifan, who's helping us with the 3D modeling. So why are we here? In 2015, the city adopted a neighborhood plan for the neighborhood. And it included a couple of specific strategies for improving the design of new construction of new single-family homes and duplexes. And it specifically mentioned making sure that any new design standards are fairly simple to implement and that they're just done administratively by the city staff. And then strategy 6 and 3 here mentions incorporating elements of architectural and landscaping policies and details from the built environment into an overlay zone for the planning area. So implementing that strategy from the plan is what we're here to do. There's also a policy in the plan about some specific neighborhood design guidance, and I won't read them all here, but it relates to building size, front porches, landscaping, garages, windows and doors. And these are all great. We just want to get your feedback on a little bit of clarification for all these different items. And one thing we noticed as well is that around the time that the plan was adopted and with some of the recent development, most new homes in the neighborhood seem to be 2 stories, but you're allowed to have 3-story homes in the neighborhood. So making sure you have some good design standards for that possibility of larger buildings is becoming more and more important. So quite simply, the project purpose is to create a new character overlay zone that will have new design standards that reinforce the neighborhood's historical residential architecture forms and features. And where this will apply is just within the neighborhood core zone, which is mapped out in the neighborhood plan. That's roughly north of Clay Avenue and behind the commercial areas off Milton Avenue. It also includes about a block and a half north of the railroad tracks as well. So that's the only area we're looking at. We're not looking at multifamily apartment areas or commercial areas, just kind of that central neighborhood core where it's mostly single family and duplex development today. So just for some context, what's currently allowed there is under the current zoning, which is the R1N zone for the city of Flagstaff. You can build single family, duplex, group homes, and some home daycare and home occupations. And you can also build some other things with a little bit higher level of review, including higher occupancy homes, congregate care, daycare centers, and institutional residential facilities. And as far as the dimensions of the lots and how those can be developed in the neighborhood, any new lots, which probably aren't very likely since the area has been built out, but if you were to build a new lot, it would need to be a minimum of 6,000 square feet, 50 feet wide along the street frontage, a maximum building height of 35 feet, or 40 feet if you have a steeply pitched roof. Maximum lot coverage of 35%. That basically means if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, you can only cover 3,500 square feet with a building. There's a maximum residential density of 14 homes per acre, and there's various parking standards as well in place, depending on the type of dwelling unit that it is. Yeah, question?
Is that a curiosity question?
Yeah, go ahead.
If someone were to get 6,000 square foot lots, could they build an apartment complex?
No, because multifamily or apartments are not currently allowed under the zoning. Question in the back?
Are these new guidelines? Because the neighbors do not follow this. Yeah, I agree. So like how works? How do they do?
I will defer to city staff on how long the R1N zoning has been in place.
Well, we adopted a code in 2011, but R1N, I believe, is before 2011.
So how are they able to build a house and build? Because they didn't follow that.
Yeah, I'd have to be able to look at the address and just see what the new homes constructed.
Yeah, so we covered the building and go from last. Okay.
Great.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
About that. When I was first about the parking,
Yes.
so next door, they're building an Airbnb to me, and they're saying that there's gonna be like for 3 different groups to stay there at the same time. So how they're going to
That's a great question. I would also give Dan the exact address of that site. You can probably help. Yeah. He's probably heard from you. Yeah.
There's an Airbnb being built next to my house, and they're planning on having a rate it in the So how's it going? Thank you.
So I think there are some things that in the state of Arizona, of course, with people who want to have Airbnb, but we do know that sometimes people say one thing on their building plan, you have the code compliance staff, sometimes without compliance staff, and one Airbnb, or things like that, it's not compatible with what they need to do. And we do know the compliance staff that follows up on things like that. And they're actually occupied, as long as they're constructing their building plans, they're staying up with the building plans. That is something that, changes like that, you can see that are driven by the market and not like the city code. There was another question about when to do it. I came up and I think that the ones you may have been referring to, Anita, were the high occupancy housing ones, which are new and didn't exist until about 15 months ago. I think it was March of last year when they became effective. So things that were started for that time you could build such a bedroom in that house and with single family home, not have, yeah. So that is newer, even though the rest of what's allowed in Ireland is something that's been taken for a while. Yeah, they are one of single family duplex, nothing they have to do.
Well, no, it's like they're planning on renting it out. It's 3 bedrooms, but he wants to, according to the concrete. So they say,
Single
yeah,
family home should have one kitchen. That's one of the determined, so that 3 kitchens, that would be pretty. So it should just have 1 kitchen, but folks who rent out different parts of their homes.
perfect. And then parking, and sorry to say, maybe it's shaking your head. Airbnb will be used to this. So we look at really how many units, right, bedrooms in that parking, but there are, there are into the things that we look at how advertising it. Theater and label. And so there's some way.
All right, let's jump forward. I just wanted to quickly mention the project schedule. We started last fall and we're about halfway through. The stars being our workshops today and tomorrow. You don't have to come tomorrow, it'll be the same presentation. Then we'll be back in late summer to show a draft of the character overlay standards, which is intended to be the final project or product of this effort. So it'll be at the end of this effort, we'll have a design standards document that functions as a pattern book with good design examples for the neighborhood. So it'll have lots of graphics and photos that will help builders and developers know what the neighborhood expects of new construction. And outside of that, the project intent is to reinforce the current character and quirkiness of the neighborhood. I've heard people coming in talking about some kind of neat little situations going on with their different neighboring houses. We suggest keeping this process in the final document pretty simple, focusing on just a handful of standards for building design and site planning. And a lot of the work we do, sometimes these documents can be, 50 or 100 pages, but we intend to keep this pretty short and concise, since I think there's just a few basic things to address here. This will apply to, or I should mention also, we intend to offer choices in how the design standards are met. So that's the cost of construction is not significantly impacted by complying with the standards. These will apply just to new buildings. And we also want to identify how to address remodels and additions of existing buildings and how they would or would not need to comply with the standards. And again, the intent is to keep the process simple, to have staff review any new construction under these standards administratively in-house. And I'll mention what this project is not, because I know code enforcement is an issue in the neighborhood. That's something the city is currently addressing right now with the new property care ordinance. And don't worry, these photos are not from within the neighborhood today, but we know there are some homes that people are concerned about, but that won't be addressed as part of this effort. And just something that we've observed generally is that the neighborhood is very unique. It's friendless and its sense of community, especially compared to some other places we've worked in on the West Coast. And they're kind of the street grid, the small blocks, the small homes, kind of blend in the front yards, and the porches really do a great job of lending themselves to a sense of kind of socializing the community. And that's something we want to cherish and carry forward and make sure that kind of feature of the neighborhood goes forward with no matter what the neighborhood looks like going into the future. So we'll do a quick review of what we observed in the neighborhood. Just starting with the older single family homes in Plaza Vieja. There's a mix of styles and designs. As you know, they're usually one story, especially the older they are, the smaller in square footage they tend to be. Many of the older homes have been improved upon recently with these ones selected had new siding and new little entries over the front door added recently, for example. Lots of homes have also been altered in ways over time since they originally built to suit the needs of the owners and residents. So this includes some interesting additions, changes to siding, changes to doors and windows and whatnot. So people are definitely continuing to invest in their homes over time. You've also got the design of some homes that are pretty quirky and eclectic with a variety of different materials, shapes. And for example, the arch canopy and the use of the Malpai stone is definitely unique to this community. The newer single family and duplex homes tend to be 2 stories, and they tend to be a fairly simple design with a pitched roof. The building on the right here is an example of a newer duplex building that looks like it could be big enough to be an apartment building, but it's just got 2 units or two dwelling units within it. And then someone, again, mentioning apartments. Apartments were previously allowed to be developed under a previous version of the R1N zoning, but these are not currently allowed. So the color change in the slide here just kind of shows we're doing a more quick photo montage of some key elements. So here we want to highlight, again, most homes have a covered entry or a porch facing the street, which is great, just to, be welcoming and have a friendly face to the street. It's a great place, if it's raining out, to enter without, while you're fumbling with your keys, or to put a chair out there. Single family homes have a variety of different shapes, or what we call massing and articulation. So this photo on the left we'll come back to a couple of times, but you can kind of see it's got 2 gable ends on the outside of it facing the streets, and then it's got kind of that porch in the middle of the roof is shaped in a different direction. As far as the roof orientation, because the lots are fairly narrow in La Plaza Vieja, we noticed that the gable ends, or the end of the triangle shape, tends to face the street, and it's pretty common, but it's not 100% the rule. So here's an example of some other options where the longer end of the roof, where you can see the shingles of the top of the roof is facing the street, for example. Front yard landscaping tends to be pretty modest, obviously, given the climate. And there's a variety of either vegetated or using hardscape or rocks. Fence and wall materials are across the board. You've got wood, concrete, stone, plastic, cement block. And because of the variety of that, we actually don't think we need to or want to regulate that, because it's one of the kind of the key character defining elements of the neighborhood. Just a variety of different fence styles and wall styles that homeowners have built over the years. So with that, so the staff would like to sit down with folks. Looks like we can form maybe 4 groups, or we can form around tables and sketch out some of your concerns and goals for this project and kind of the future of the neighborhood in general. For example, your concerns might be related to things you don't like on recent construction, or what you would be concerned with seeing on new buildings in the future, in terms of design or the function of your neighborhood. And we're also interested in your goals for the future of the neighborhood in terms of what you want to see in new developments, or ideal features of new homes or spaces in the neighborhood. And we're also interested in seeing if there's any differences in relation to how design relates to housing affordability, which we know is also an increasing problem as well. So, and I believe in the back of the room, there's also an art box set up that the City of Flagstaff is working on its regional plan update. So you can certainly contribute to that as well, and how La Plaza Vieja relates to the regional planning that is going on. So with that, I think we'll do that for about 10 or 15 minutes and we post things up. All right. Thank you. I heard some good discussion going on, especially at my table. I'm going to maybe put the facilitators on the spot real quick. You want to just say a sentence or two about kind of the key themes you heard from folks? Maybe I'll start. A couple of folks at my table mentioned they've been in the neighborhood for generations, and they're less concerned about maybe the design of buildings and more about just preserving the integrity and the history of the neighborhood. So I think that's something we'll, yeah. So it sounds very common theme, yeah. So we'll see how much the ideas we have resonate with you, and maybe we'll end up taking a different track, and that's fine. And maybe we'll then change direction. We'll do what we need to do. But maybe Mark or Sarah want to mention what you heard?
I volunteered because my table was neighborhood planner, historic preservation officer, call me, email me, do whatever. Because there are some bigger things there. And then it does really key into some of the stuff you talked about was the property care ordinance, some of those problematic issues that drive you crazy with people that aren't acting like quality neighbors. So we are working on that as well. So join that effort as well. You can do it online or you can actually go to the meetings. And we have a listing of meetings on our website as well.
With my group, historic preservation, was also members. Quote, that was super important. But yeah, just like incentivizing that. And then I think some of the concerns brought up would be more to maintain that neighborhood character. Then I heard from another table, this concern about that potential for some duplexes to go into that.
And I have concern.
Yeah.
Traffic, people cutting through and driving too fast.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's.
Anything else? Key thoughts?
Yeah, I was at a bunch of different things, but yeah, I'm similar concerns about height, surprised that somebody could build 3 stories. Concerns about parking, generating student. Yeah, different parking demands for student housing versus families.
Yeah, I heard a similar concern about a project that was supposed to be just 1 story and ended up being 2 stories later, or 2 or 3 stories later on, after the neighborhood first started. So, I thought we could also, we don't have time to do an introduction for everyone, but maybe we can do a quick raise of hands, just kind of get a sense of maybe folks' connection to the neighborhood. Maybe I guess the quickest way to do it would be just raise your hand for how long you've lived in the Plaza Vieja. So anyone who's lived here 5 years or less, 10 years or less, 15, 20, 25, more than 25 years. Wow, okay. Wow. Right. Alright. Okay, so we're gonna go into the first survey. So we have kind of 3 rounds of these. They're intended to be pretty quick. The first is a design element survey. There's just 4 questions here, and the way it works is everyone should have a little black clicker with numbers on it. The answer to it, there are multiple choice questions, and they're all numbered. So just click the button on your clicker that corresponds to what you want to answer. If you have a green light, it should show your answer came through. And you can change your mind, or you can resend your answer until we move on to the next slide. And you won't see your answers at first. We'll go back at the end of the round and go through all of them, and hopefully have a good discussion about why people voted the way they did. So we're going to try to do a test question first, make sure everything's working. So if you
Hey,
can't,
that's from my hometown.
yeah, maybe this is from Roswell, but the question here is, should this design style be allowed in La Plaza Vieja? So click 1 for yes, click 2 for not sure, and click 3 for no, or heck no. And it looks like we handed out about 30, so we'll see if we get 30 on the chart.
I picked it up.
Perfect, okay. This is just a test question, we're not seriously.
No, I want to be better.
Unless someone's really enthusiastic, we can definitely work on it. Okay, sounds like we've got 20 in here.
Is anybody cooking and maybe not seeing it show up and are you getting green light? If you're not getting a green light, raise your hand now, let's switch back.
Can I try it again?
That's not sure.
Well, let's do it on the next question since we are in there. Okay, 95% no, so definitely
Somebody
not.
liked it.
Heard loud and clear. All right, so let's go into the first one. I'll try to explain them since not everyone here is an architect. But we've noticed on some of the newer developments, for this duplex, for example, some of them have a fairly long roof line. That's continuous. It's not broken up by any breaks in it or dormers or anything like that. I think it's about 75 feet long. So just in general, do you think roof lines that long should continue or to be allowed on new homes? So same answer choices. Yes, not sure, no. Maybe we'll give you about 20 seconds to
Look away.
And if you don't see the light, come on, raise your hand. I'll bring you in.
So that's probably what, that might have been built on 2 lots, for example.
No, it's a lot where it's a corner lot and they built it on the long way.
Okay, yeah. And if anyone's not getting green lights, we can get you a new clicker. So we got most in here. All right. All right, so the next question asks about detail. So, or the lack of detail. So on this home, the design elements include the porch with a shed roof, some trim around the windows, and some really simple porch lights. So is that enough? Is that enough detail to make this an interesting small wall that fits in the neighborhood? Yeah.
There used to be one as well.
Oh, your cousins?
And used to be a little smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah, I think it's about 15 feet wide.
yeah. It's great. Only the small ones there.
All right, got 21 in there. So the next one. So next one I asked about landscaping. So the question I'm just going to explain. This is one of those newer homes. The photo was taken in winter, so it's not very green. But if you look at the top-down view of it compared to some of the neighboring homes, the aerial view shows that the paving for the parking area covers probably a little bit more than half of the width of the lot where it faces the street. And then the rest of it is covered by, looks like a small lawn. So is that amount of landscaping in the front yard acceptable compared to the amount of paving? Yes, not sure, no. That's it. That last one. So with this one, we're asking you about floor differentiation, which is a fancy word for showing some kind of marking or division between the floors visible from the outside of the building. So for this building, it's just a plain siding facade between both floors, as compared to some other buildings in the neighborhood which have something like a horizontal band, or this building has a different siding material on the part of the top floor, kind of distinguishing the second floor a little bit. So we're curious if that's critical for the character of the neighborhood, or if this kind of more simple, humble design is appropriate. So there's the question.
Why is that in the all the things you could ask right now?
It's just something we noticed on the newer construction, especially here. What's that?
They're already done.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, new existing buildings. That's just the way they are. So, yeah.
It's just an area where there's not a consistent look to them, and because they're bigger than the historic cottages, you look at them and go, should they all be similar? Do you not care? Do you want them to be plain and more cottage-like? Like, what is the idea is just which of these is, you don't have to have a preference, but if you do, we want to know that. I don't care, it's a perfectly acceptable answer.
Yeah. All right, so let's run through what folks thought. So for number one, more than 50% said no, continuous reply to that launch should not be allowed, and about a third said not sure. So, yeah, it's about what I expected, and we'll probably look into that a little bit more in terms of what can be done about it. Level of detail on the home. This is a little bit more split. About a little more than a third said yes, 14% not sure, and 50% said no. So again, I think that's something that looking at what the older homes have will be kind of an influence on how far any new standards go there. Actually, I should go back and to number 1 and 2. Anyone want to mention why they voted the way they did on these two?
Yeah, I will. Because that longer line, it's boxier, more bulky, and more massive from the street, then people would broke it up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's no cutoff, it's just like what?
Yeah.
Well, it's low budget.
They just keep throwing buildings up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with the sightings. They know the cost.
Okay.
Students in there.
Yeah.
Massing.
Yeah. The boxing. Thoughts on this one?
Cheap,
Mhm.
real cheap.
Like somebody gave me a window on the top. That's yeah. Side.
All right.
Too cheap for the lot.
Yeah.
It's half story or 1.5 at max. Better.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Like a tower.
So the proportions of it are kind of off to skinny. Okay. So about the amount of landscaping, 28% yes, few not sure, 2/3 said no, it's not enough landscaping in the front yard. Yeah.
Since they have that impervious concrete all over, are they tax-tired for stormwater? No. What is it, stormwater?
Questions about taxing for stormwater impervious surface?
I mean, to
I'm not
me,
learning how they have the stormwater fee, but I will tell you, we don't have pavement in our lot for drains. It's about structures. So when we said 35% lot coverage, that's just the home itself. Some places actually regulate the impervious surface, so it would be the home plus any landscaping like a concrete driveway. But I think the question was about the stormwater fee. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no place for that water to go except into the street.
Right.
If you look at it, I mean, it's not fair to the taxpayers, the other taxpayers, but very little landscaping. I mean, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
But it's student housing, so they don't care.
Right. Right. Yeah, definitely low maintenance landscaping. Maybe it's green. All right. Yeah.
I actually did say yes on that one, because I was concerned about all the escaping. And to be honest with you, when I had to go from being home, I needed the parking to be in the street.
Well, that's true, that.
So it's so that's kind of a hard one. That was one. But I like your point about the drainage, because I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And this, yeah, it's kind of a tricky one, especially I heard from my table and from the summer reason I'm concerned about enough parking for people. So that'll be interesting to explore more. And then the last one here about floor differentiation, 20% yes, handful not sure, and 61% said no, it's not acceptable. So any thoughts on the yes or the no end of what you were thinking?
No, because again, like the first one, boxing, to box there,
Mhm.
the mass is just, there's nothing to it.
Yeah.
Repair it all, yeah.
Well, that's the main question, asking about the neighborhood, what characters you want to keep the neighborhood as is, that don't even look like our neighborhood.
That's true.
Yeah, it'd be different if they would have done maybe block on the first floor and then siding on the second. Maybe it would look a little bit More, yeah.
Yeah.
Do some stick frame outside.
Yeah. Just a little something to mix it up at some kind. Okay.
Would have probably been better, I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we're gonna do similar thing with, what we were thinking ahead of time. And again, based on what I've heard tonight, some of these actually probably may not be consistent with what, you all are interested in, but, we got them up, so we'll just run through them. They're also summarized in one of the posters back there if folks want to look at it later. But we've got 10 preliminary strategies for the design standards that we're looking at. And again, they're mostly based off those neighborhood policies, design policies from the 2015 neighborhood plan. And there's just a handful of that plan kind of highlighted a list of important ones, and some of them are pretty clear. There's a handful here that we want to ask about. We'll go through all these, but we got 10 strategies to ask about. So the first one is to require a covered entry or porch for all residential units facing or visible from the street for new construction. The purpose of that would be because it seems to be a key. It's just kind of a practical thing to do, but it's also a kind of a real hallmark of the neighborhood, and improves livability and sociability between residents. Then we would suggest providing some minimum dimensions for that covered entry. Usually, for example, we do like 3 feet by 3 feet has to be covered from the rain, or a certain depth of a porch to make sure it's usable. So that would be required on both single family and for any entries into a duplex facing the street. So we're curious what folks think of that. The answer choices are different here. They're 1 through 5, 1 being great, 2 is a good idea, 3 you're kind of neutral or on the fence, 4 you dislike it, and 5 you hate the idea. So go ahead and vote. Thank you. So again, we'll go back through at the end. So concept number 2 is to create facade articulation standards, which means the facade is the front of the house facing the street. And articulation means you do something with the shape or the different siding or windows, something to help break it up and make different parts of the building kind of smaller. You kind of break down a large building into smaller pieces. So my thought would be to apply only to facades longer than 30 feet, since that would be longer than the historic lot width pattern in the neighborhood. Again, the purpose would be to reinforce historic neighborhood scale. Most older homes are pretty small, while also accommodating a little bit of flexibility for some of the more modern construction we're seeing. And how that would be implemented is by providing a toolbox of different options that builders could choose from to help have a little bit of variety and choice in how they meet the requirements. And so basically, this home, which is about 50 feet wide, we think does a good job of that by having kind of separate gable ends, the porch. One end is 2 stories versus 1 story. And the intent is definitely to prevent those longer buildings without many features kind of breaking up. It just kind of goes on forever. So a few different ways that a couple different tools that could be in there is to have a change in the shape of the roof. You could count covered entries and porches as part of those features. You could have different shapes or sizes or placement of windows to count as a feature. Changes in material or color on the outside. Building modulation, which means the building either steps back closer or farther away from the street, on the street side, or some other vertical elements. You could count a chimney, things like that. So requiring some type of articulation for the facade. What do you think about that, the breakout buildings? Just about everybody. All right, next is a similar concept to require upper floor articulations that would again apply to the facade facing the street. And the intent is to, again, accommodate the neighborhood's historic character, to have a toolbox of options to articulate walls. Basically, any building that's taller than 1 story to help. That's something we heard and we've seen that, the cottage size, smaller homes are definitely what the neighborhood is mostly made up of. So the intent would be to kind of prevent the kind of straight up wall and blank walls that we're seeing on some newer construction. So different options that could be provided to home builders are get an idea of maybe horizontal banding to mark different floors, different materials on different floors, which someone mentioned a moment ago. Maybe a porch comes out to help on the ground floor to make that a little bit heavier and look different than the top floor. Or maybe require the second floor to step back as another option, a little bit from the first floor. So, I guess in that, thoughts on upper floor articulation? Questions 4 through 6 have to do with roof lines of homes. And we just threw up this image from Google Earth, just knowing there's kind of a variety of different shapes and styles of roof types in the neighborhood. So that would be interesting to see what folks think about that. So this is very similar to the facade articulation question, but it has to do with just the roof line. And again, we think it could apply, or suggested might apply to facades on 30 feet. And it could include some of the options for home builders could be changing the orientation or the direction that the roof faces, an offset roof line, meaning you have kind of, what's the best way to describe that? You have a kind of a setback, and you have 2 different roofs kind of as part of the second story. You can have dormer windows, which provide a little bit of window facing on the side of a gable roof. So, and again, the idea is to prevent basically the long roof lines that were similar to that first question we had earlier. So thoughts on that?
Got 3 questions already.
Yeah.
Would this apply to new construction or only remodel?
Mostly new construction, especially something like this, which is a pretty big.
Mostly, but it could apply to remodel?
We haven't figured that out totally yet. I mean, if it's a major addition, like you're doubling the size of a house, maybe you need to do something a little extra. But it's just you're adding an extra bedroom or something small, probably. Probably wouldn't need to worry about these. It's kind of what the direction we're going so far.
Possible, depending on the extent.
Yeah, and also what side of the house it's on. Like if it's in your backyard, no one's going to see it. Maybe we care less about that. So. All right. Number 5 is about shed roof lines. The shed roof line is basically where you have a single plane or a single piece that's kind of at a shallow angle, as opposed to kind of a more triangular pitched roof. And we notice these style of roofs are, we wanted to ask about it because they're increasingly popular and they're fairly cost effective to build. We know they're not some places that have a lot of snow, like Flagstaff, don't always build them because they're hard to meet snow load requirements. But they are becoming more and more common. So basically the idea is to allow shed roof lines on primary buildings and also accessory buildings, which are like your garage or your shed in the back, which traditionally would have where the word shed roof comes from. But this would be about kind of the main house. So how do folks feel about shed roofs?
main home or?
Are there kind of well moving up? I kind of know that. That's to allow a shed roof on a regular house?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Oh. If you want that design.
yeah. Obviously, there's different ways you can design it. That's an example. All right, I think we're good there. All right, last roof question, I think. It's about roof orientation standards. So this would apply only to the more narrow lots in town, probably 30 or 25 feet being the typical historical size. And again, the idea is to reinforce historic patterns. So the requirement would be that on those narrow lots, you require the gable end of the roof to face the street. So that's the kind of triangle shaped end of a typical fixed roof, as opposed to the longer side of a gable roof facing the street. So a couple of examples of this is actually kind of more of a dormer window, but that's kind of example of a mixed orientation. Here you have both that gable end, which is what we're interested in, versus on the other side of the house, you have the side of the facing the street. So again, in the neighborhood, it doesn't have too much consistency with this. We're just curious how much it matters for those narrow lots where the scale of the house really matters. Yeah, here's some examples of the longer end of the house facing the streets, especially over a porch.
So on narrow lots, sorry.
Yeah.
The roof line, is it like a, so I'm just thinking, as far as my mom's house, and so they just sold, or maybe have sold a house that's like a narrow lot. And so if the roof's like this, is it gonna be like how far out? Because honestly, my mom's foundation is, her house is falling apart because there's a lot of water that has fallen into her yard.
Oh, okay.
And went under, so like how far out would that be?
Like the eaves that kind of go over the side of the house.
Yeah,
It's typically 2 feet. I don't think that's something we would necessarily regulate unless there's something consistent about the neighborhood that we haven't noticed yet. But yeah, typically, if you don't have enough eaves, that can definitely be a problem where it drips down the side and gets into your foundation. So, but I think most modern houses have it, the roof will extend 2 or 3 feet beyond the side of the house.
I've seen the construction in Plaza that the stormwater is gonna run off onto someone else's property, so these things can matter. How those projects got through, I can't figure out, but you know, they get all that pavement around them and the water runs off the roof and it runs downhill right into someone else's.
Rain gutters.
Yeah, roof orientation makes a difference there, you know, where the gutters are located and where the downspout is. So, yeah. Okay, I only got 11 here. Anyone else want to answer before we move on quickly? Okay. All right, concept number 7 is about building materials. So I mentioned at the beginning, we've observed there's kind of a smorgasbord or, a variety of different building materials in the neighborhood. Just folks using probably what was on hand or the cheapest to build or use at the time they built their house. So we suggest actually not regulating that, just to preserve that character, not enforce too much uniformity. So allowing people to continue using malpai, stucco, wood, brick, concretes, or whatever, fiberboard or whatever else they think is most perfect for their house. So is that something we want to do, or we want to be more strict about that? If you want to be more strict, maybe vote for 4 or 5. But if you like the idea, 1, 2, or 1 or 2.
Well, it would be nice if it weren't strict, but you needed to find a historic property in the neighborhood that used that material. Right?
So not something totally new and out of the blue, but it's been used before. Yeah.
Hope the new properties with the historic.
Yeah.
But a lot of them were wood and they stuck it over.
Okay. So question number 8, and when we go back around, I anticipate some interesting thoughts on this. The concept here is to prohibit new parking areas in the front of homes or between between the porch and the sidewalk, where there's an alleyway in the rear that can be used to access for parking. And that would be for the purpose of respecting the historic development pattern neighborhood where you have and your front door and your porch with a nice walkway and maybe a small yard facing the street, kind of intimate and kind of walking friendly. And it would only apply where functional alleyways exist. So the definition of functional might be up for debate if it's paved or dirt. We can talk a little bit more about that. But otherwise, if that's not possible, the requirement we should at least locate the driveway to the side of the house, not right in front of where the front door typically would be. So really curious what we think of this strategy. Here's your photo example of what parking in front looks like in a different neighborhood.
Well, can I say something?
Yeah.
What about parking on the side?
Yeah, I just mentioned if you can't park in the back off an alley, the concept is to require at least parking on the side.
We live on the other side of the house, we've been there over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
When we first lived there, they said about the alleys and they stopped running the alleys.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, this phase of parking off the alleys is new.
Yeah.
This is something new. And so that would be a transition from the traditional way the neighborhood is functioned
Mm-hmm.
with probably bringing up lighting as well, with parking on the side. But that's not what your question is. You're saying in front.
Right.
Which would normally be yard. So I don't know how to answer your question.
So basically, if you value having the pedestrian entry in a yard be more prominent in the front versus parked cars, then you want to then you might think this is a good idea. And we could also have a difference between probably the lower part of the neighborhood versus the upper part might have different alleyway conditions. So it could be more nuanced to accommodate for that. All right, get your votes in. Okay. Concept number 9 is to require facade window consistency just on the front of the structure facing the street. Again, to reinforce historic patterns. We're typically so the idea is that windows on the facade, like in this building, needs to be either sized, designed, or grouped on the wall in a way that creates some kind of symmetry or consistency on each floor, as opposed to an example like this where you have some different shaped windows. This one's just a full plate glass window. This one has this one's open and it has some panes in it. That just creates a little bit of. No, it's not necessarily bad, but it just creates a little bit of asymmetry that's unique to that. So we haven't heard too strong opinions on this so far. It might not be that important, but it was mentioned in the neighborhood plan. So we thought we should ask about it and see if this is still relevant to us. So some examples here, like on this building, there's at least 3 different window types. Like this is a double window. There's a short window here and a taller one at the top. Different size windows here. The greenhouse, the upstairs center window is offset from above the front door. And this house has double windows except for this one's a single. So those are some examples of how things have been done. And sometimes it can be challenging because the window depends on if it's a kitchen or a bathroom on the inside, and it's hard to control what it looks like on the outside. But it still could be something that we look at for the future construction. So what do you think about requiring consistency in the windows? All right, last but not least, requiring window trim or recess, which are some details that add a little bit of character or uniqueness to windows. This would only apply again to the walls facing the street. And we propose this because we notice most homes in the neighborhood do include this. So trim would be, it's usually wood or plastic that's some kind of color that's different than the rest of the siding material. Like kind of just helps the window pop out a little bit. And a recess means the window glass itself is set back from the edge of the siding, just to add a little bit of shadow and depth to it. So the requirement would be to either do that, trim or recess, or some other design treatment that adds interest to the facade. For example, if you have a stucco building, you don't necessarily, a small recess of maybe only half an inch is what you need to do. So something deep. So there would be some flexibility there. So here's how go to that as the last question. Everybody, thanks for your patience. We run through that, so we'll go through the answers. If anyone has a burning thought on why you voted, let's get into it. So requiring covered entry or porch. This is actually kind of across the board. At least half thought it was a good idea, but we had quite a few folks who were on the fence and a handful who didn't like it. Anyone who did not like this idea, want to mention why?
I went with neutral just because I don't think anybody should be told to actually add a porch or something to cover the door if the homeowner don't like it. But at the same time, it is a good idea, so I went with neutral.
Okay. Other thoughts? Yes.
When there's a covered porch, students tend to sit outside and birds out there. Whereas people, homeowners might go in.
Yeah.
Homeowners might be inside more, but students will have a couch and they will sit out there and have parties.
Yeah. So maybe the age of the resident is where this matters.
The use of porch has changed over time.
Yeah.
Porches are nice though.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
break it up.
Well, and then it's your neighbor who like.
Yeah.
Not just go.
Depends on. All right, articulation standards. This looks pretty clear. About most everyone thought it was a great idea or a good idea. A couple of folks on the fence. Yeah, I think that's definitely something to move forward with. Any burning thoughts on that? I think that's pretty clear. Okay. Even stronger preference for upper floor articulation. So yeah, the bigger buildings sounds like they need to do something a little bit extra on the second or third floor, even if they have 3 floors. So, and again, that'll have like kind of, those will both have those toolbox options, and we'll have those in the draft for folks to look at. Same with roof modulation. Having options there to break up the roof lines. Half thought it was a great idea. A few neutral, and the percentages don't come through there, but a handful of dislikes are very bad idea. So we talked about roof lines a lot, but does anyone have any thoughts on this approach you want to share?
If you have a 25-foot lot and you want a house of any size and you don't want to go to a second or third story, you would have to do one lot.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have a lot of choice.
Right. Yeah, so this would hopefully at least, break it up at the, whatever the historical lot width would be, which is 25 feet.
Where is that building in the neighborhood?
That's not in the neighborhood. That's thankfully, right? Yeah. Yeah. At least it has 2 different paint colors. So that's about yeah. All right, shed roof lines, more of a mixed response here. About a third think it's a great or good idea, it's neutral, and probably more folks thought it was a dislike or a very bad idea. So curious to know what folks what everyone thought when you voted on that. Do you think it just doesn't fit in, or you think it's ugly, or
It's too industrial.
industrial? Okay.
Work for a neighbor has that in Torrance. His whole house, the whole house is rubble, but they have that, and they just, yes, the snow just falls in chunks and just there's no rocking. The earth is crashing, because it's so much.
Yeah, not great for snow. Yeah.
We just use awful.
Okay. Yeah, we weren't too certain on that one, so just kind of testing the waters there. But it sounds like it's not a critical one. Roof orientation standards. Kind of a range between. No one felt too strongly about this. Voted between good and dislike. And I know this one's a little bit more abstract or kind of technical, but it sounds like more folks disliked it, and maybe there's a desire for more flexibility. So, thoughts on why you voted the way you did? Anyone?
I like it.
One like?
I
Okay.
think that's what you're talking about, how her mom's house is next to your house, it's shaped like that, and the lot is so narrow, when the snow and water falls down, there's not really anywhere for it to go other than into her yard, the neighbor's yard, which, because of the way the food is.
You do have to have a little overhang to go, or else it gets down in your.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just, I think that's why she.
All right, we have the long edge next to your side yard. Yeah, okay.
This is hard to relate, I don't know.
I mean, it's close.
Yeah.
You know, my mom has a lot, her lot is small. And like I said, the water, the sidewalk that they made is kind of tilted this way versus up. So the tilting and the water falling down comes under my mom's house and next to her foundation.
Yeah.
Now she has cracks in it.
Yeah.
All right. Building materials, not regulating that. Looks like definitely a good majority thought it was a good idea to stay away from that. So,
Could I make a comment?
yeah,
Is there a way to encourage native materials to be put in?
yeah,
Because
definitely.
that's what I've seen on those other ones, the star boxes. The PJ.
Yeah, just wood.
They could put a little design, a little nullified wall or brick wall.
Mhm.
I don't think we have any brick walls in Plaza Vieja that I know, but just something to break up and encourage the builder to make it look like part of the neighborhood.
Yeah. I think, yeah, we had that list of articulation options earlier, and I think the change in material or if you want that, and we could specifically list something like that, like some little touch,
Something that's.
Yeah. yeah. You know, it could just be, the bottom half of the first floor or something around the front door, something. Yeah. I think that's something we can do. Parking areas in front of homes. Yeah, definitely a mixed response here. About, I would say half and half thought it was a good idea versus not thinking it's a great idea. So you all live and park in the neighborhood every day. So I'm really curious what you think about this in terms of, especially in regards to new construction, where you might see, more bedrooms, more students, more duplexes coming in. What were your thoughts on this in terms of the neighborhood character?
Well, where we live, there is no side, like the house I'm talking about, they have nowhere else to park except for the front.
Yeah.
Unless, well, they have a shed in the back. Really. Don't have access, I guess, to park up there or never need it. But they have no choice but to park in the front, there will be there.
Yeah. Yeah. In that situation, they wouldn't be penalized if there's really no choice. Yeah.
I guess my thought was, are we not going to allow driveways in the front?
You could have a driveway, like off to the side of the house at least, under this concept.
You're thinking off to the side and not.
Right.
I don't think it looks good when there's cars parked over the yard like that, but as you get into homes that have many students, I guess it's that or the street. I mean, I don't know, it's it's a tough one, because I guess you'd rather them cram up their own yard than park all over the street and block everybody.
Yeah.
We have a neighbor that they have, probably 10 or 15 cars, and they park everywhere, on the street, on the corners, literally on the corner of the street. And in the front yard, there's no pavement whatsoever, there's no rhyme or reason. They park in the backyard, on the side of the house, to the front, everywhere. It's just horrible all the time. We're constantly having issues with people during the snow season, because they just think they can park anywhere, because there's no like designated parking.
Yeah.
It's all dirt.
Is it where you mentioned snow, but also like blocking the sidewalk? Is that an issue too? No sidewalks? Yeah.
They block
Not
it.
everywhere. Yeah. Okay.
So, it's great to have some kind of structure of where you should park, but it's hard because like my nephew, where he lives here, you can only park in the front of his house.
Yeah.
There's no way to get anywhere else to park in. But that house, for example, there's plenty of ways to park in. They should have some structure parking, but it's kind of a mixture of parking.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too. I don't think there's hardly any garages with garage doors in the neighborhood. So it's mostly outdoor parking. So that's in some ways that makes it a little bit easier, because then you can park anywhere on the lot. All right. Facade window consistency. I'd say, I think the neutrals won this one. That's the first one so far. Didn't feel too strongly about it either way. Any observations on this? Why you like it or think we should avoid it? Is it too much control, or is it helpful?
I think it begins to be cookie cutter than that you should allow the windows.
Mm-hmm.
For the best, we have an old home that has these windows, we've been trying to replace them, so we have the older parents who are looking in those, when we go get new windows, we have to.
Yeah.
Oh, this is for new builds?
Yeah, this would be for new builds. Yeah. We don't want to restrict existing homes from having a certain window type or shape.
I like the consistency.
Well, for the container homes,
Like,
might we have it in your claim?
oh, that's a great question. Like the prefabricated
No,
homes?
it's just a container that they made under.
Oh, I don't know if are we going to get into that too much with this project? That's kind of a unique one. We could. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, those are built in the factory, so in theory, it's pretty easy to make it consistent. Yeah.
Right next to a block building.
Yeah. All right. And also on windows requiring trim or recess to help make a little bit of detail. It looks like about 50% thought it was a good idea, quarter neutral, and a few dislikes. So, yeah, this is a pretty common one we do in residential communities. So it's not really too hard to do for builders. So it's probably something we'll explore more in the draft standards. Unless there's any thoughts we should have on going into that. Okay. All right, so I know we're getting late, so we're gonna run up just a couple of final questions here. At the corner of Clay Avenue and Globe Street, there's a recently sold or about to be sold property on a corner, and the owner was interested in kind of seeing basically how much square footage they could build and what kind of design they could build on the property. So we did some 3D modeling to just kind of visualize what a duplex could look like on the site. So there's some different ways the duplexes can be designed, and kind of considering all the standards and elements we just talked about, we kind of tested 5 different versions of that, actually more. We want to see if there's a difference in how you react to it. So again, this is I know folks are a little concerned about three-story development, but that's allowed. So if a property owner chose to do that, especially on a, we intentionally designed 3-story park facing kind of busier street on Clay versus it steps down to a two-story unit on Glow. So, but we're curious if the different treatments make you react a little bit differently. So,
Clear of which street is.
Nunez house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
none of us like it.
yeah.
all right, so we'll do these real quick. Just again, yes, not sure, no, 1, 2, and 3. Is this kind of plain design with no articulation features between floors acceptable? I have a feeling I know what the answer will look like.
Is there a reason why this regulation might look like 3-story? I know you said it's a book thing, but like, why don't we regulate the cleaning? And I'm probably not going to speak because I have a 3-story house. But your view is not. It's not, it's like, yeah, so when these lots and people are dying and kids are selling their houses and the size of the lots, the only thing they can do is like go up. It is just gonna become just that, and it's horrible, and that's not the neighborhood. And for those of us that are still there, that plan on living there for a long more time, don't wanna see that. Like, why can't we put some kind of regulation into it? I'm not against people building a home, I feel comfortable there, but I'm, like, it has to be some kind of, I don't know, people just don't, they just want to put the most they can for the most money they can, because they're not gonna live in those houses. They're gonna rent out as many rooms as they can, for as much as they can, and we don't care about people that live there for 50 years. And parking's horrible, I mean, it's just awful. There's a lot of this property sold every, this next door to you guys, and it's between Lowerview, Upperview, and it was supposedly sold with already a plan of being a multi-level, multi-family dwelling, and I had someone that wanted to buy that lot, but were told they couldn't put their own single family home on it because of the way they selling it. So why can't we put a stop to this crazy building now instead of waiting until it's too late, like we have to wait with this deal across the street that we are stuck with on Milton. So why is that not on the table option?
It wasn't in the neighborhood plan. I think, assume 3 stories going into the future was acceptable at that time, but.
And that, I went to those meetings, I don't ever remember anyone who needed the same, but we're happy about their stories.
Yeah.
It's city regulated.
So.
Yeah.
So in Arizona in 2006, there was a statewide ballot initiative. That means anytime, if we as a city were to say, okay, lower your building height to 25 feet, you can't build this anymore. Every single property owner in the Plaza Vieja who didn't like that change in rules could apply for a waiver. And they would basically be waived out of the new rules. So basically, individual property owners have to go cut holes whenever we try and regulate zoning that way. And the high occupancy housing plan, which we passed in 2016, and then we implemented a zoning code to try and make it work at the code level, is a great example because we got 130 plus waivers.
Plus 200 plus.
200 plus. So sure, we could pass rules and say no, and all that property got to do is write a letter and they can get permission to build it.
Or 10-5.
Right.
So what Prop 207 says is we pass a land use regulation that lowers the value of the property. So the assumption is if you can build up to 35 feet today and achieve 25, what's the difference in the value of the property now? So the city council needs to say, yeah, we pay you your claim, we pay you for lowering the value, or the city can say, no, prove you must be really out of the property, let's go to the judge. We lose, we have to involve costs. Or they issue a waiver, which says you don't have to comply with this change. So we're seeing that in the age of so that's just the challenge. We can change time. But again, there's risk that you're gonna end up getting a bunch of waivers. City financially, it's fine.
Well, alternatively, if we look at these and with our actual perspective, change that maximum, we may have better luck to definitely use there's less of folks are going to find.
I'm from Colorado, and I live in a neighborhood where they built those right behind us. And they are horrible looking. They look like apartments. Because it's nothing but a big, huge building that we built. And they did one right next to each other. And my father went to visit me. He said, "What are those?" They're that bad. They look like apartments. They're too big.
Yeah.
With that, why can't we do basements? Basements.
Yeah.
I mean, when the properties were bought way back when, I was speaking to my mom and dad, it was the view. My dad sat out there to the day he died, looking at everything and just seeing, obviously, what's happening. And for someone to come and build right next door and just block that view where my mom's house is, where my dad sat forever, that's, I mean, it's just for money, man. People are buying it just for the money. The places you're talking like where I live, my mom lives there, my brother lives behind her, I live in front of her, my sister living on the street. I mean, it's our family, that's where we're at. We don't plan on moving in.
Yeah.
The city is making it look ugly. I mean, it's not what we're used to, what we want, all this ugliness.
Yeah. So.
Too. The view is just an eye for
Yeah, definitely there are ways we could address, if there's a third story, how that's designed. There are ways to require, it has to be small or set back further from the lower floors. But you could build this today, and it might take a while to get new standards in place for that. So we're just kind of curious what kind of mitigating things can we do in the meantime to at least, minimize the visual views of this kind of structure. So that's the first one. And there's a couple of examples here real quick that we'll see if they alleviate any of your concerns. It's maybe not, but we can try. So the second one, the only change here is there's that white horizontal band between floors, just to break it up a little bit. So does that make it a little bit more appetizing, or is that not making any sense?
What's the lot coverage there?
We designed to the 35% maximum, including I should mention there's a garage in the back, 2 out in the
I was
alley.
gonna say, there's parking for all those bedrooms.
Yeah. This is assumed to have, I think it's a 4-car garage off the alley. So, but yeah, there probably would be people parking on the street with, if there's lots of bedrooms here.
So how many parking spots do they have to allow?
It depends on the number of bedrooms. I think we assumed it was a minimum of 4 for a duplex of this size.
There's only 4 bedrooms in that? Only 4 parking? 4 parking.
4 parking spaces, yeah. We didn't design the inside, so couldn't say how many bedrooms there are exactly, but that's kind of.
This is a
we did guess.
picture of what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah.
If you look at the home up the street, that's Plaza Vieja.
Mhm.
So that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah, versus that. Yeah.
That's the neighborhood. This is the outcast.
Yeah. The only difference here is that example number 3 is that the siding is different on the upper floor. So, again, curious if that makes sense. Still 3 stories, of course.
These things are replacing the holes. So slowly, everything's gonna be not, no matter what side goes to. Think on properties. And they can cram in students. The neighborhood is disappearing.
Yeah.
Same gentrification that's already happening right here in South.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, That's not something we can directly control in this project, but we want to make sure, if a property owner chooses to do so with their property, which they're entitled to do, that it's done well within the neighborhood and is, trying to work within the current zoning framework that you have that allows the scale development. So, but we can be more aggressive potentially. Yeah. Almost done. This example is similar to the first one, just has a wider porch on the ground floor. So I'm assuming that they'll have similar answers to the first one. Otherwise, there's no difference. All right. And let's see, last but not least, again, has a longer porch. On this one, the upper floor is set back about an extra 5 feet from the street. So that's kind of a small version of some kind of modulation requirements. Great. So last 4 questions, and then we'll let you go shortly. We had an earlier question about shed roof lines on homes, and we thought it'd be interesting to explore that one more time to see if there's any difference in your opinions. All right, so that's definitely a no-go then. But so there's no difference here between the floors.
It looks like the city courthouse.
Maybe a little too institutional. Version 2 has horizontal banding. 2 massive still. Yeah, shed roof definitely is just a little bit.
So I think it's important to say, and maybe we should say, there's absolutely no design review at all on single family homes in Flagstaff right now, except if you're in the town site overlay. So somebody could propose all of these and the city would not have a way to say no.
Are these
In
single
the
family?
current.
This is a
This is a duplex, which gets, from an architectural standpoint, it has other parking and things, but in the architecture, it is just like a single family home.
It's still a single.
Yeah.
So if it came in with 8 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms, would they just? But that's not a family home, even in duplex. It's not, I can't say they would stop, but they would, unless they applied for the waiver, which many are, as you just said, they would have to get a conditional use permit.
Same law. You can give up over the very long position to accept.
Somebody needs to put it back on the wall.
Yeah, if you'd like to start petition to get it appealed. That's the path. Yeah.
Last but not least in this series, the 3rd floor is about half the size and then also the roof or the porch on the ground floor extends on. So here's if that makes any difference. That any more sense. Yeah, it probably would be kind of expensive all the different roofs. Okay, let's quickly run through the results. Wow, okay. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Always stand up for you can see me. What you see the space. So in 1943, I was born there when this new building is going up. That whole area was called Chunkus, the second set of Chunkus. The original Chunkus were up, were safely there. They all belonged to the sawmill, Saginaw sawmill. That's the style that was there. All I'm hearing here is line, vertical, horizontal, how we can change, how we ought to do this and not to do it. When you go to New Orleans, you go to San Diego, you go to any place where they claim in Old Town, the Plaza Vieja, they want to keep things as they were, not be changing. And here we are talking about changing, and we're allowing this type of thing to go on. We have allowed it. A lot of those houses that are up and down Clay, the Reavises, the Gomez's, the Cruces, all of those families bought those houses from Mr. Dolan, who was the owner of the sawmill at the time, and started moving them up into the Plaza Vieja. We have to remember what the name of this place is that. It's called La Vieja, meaning, translation, old town. And you might say, well, where did that name come from? Well, first of all, it came from the first pioneers that came here into that area. Okay? A lot of them were of Mexican descent, which have never been traded before. We've always been told that there was Anglos that settled the area. So it's not always true. Okay? And but that is who populated that area. That's where the name Plaza Vieja. Then you might say, so there's a couple of signs, one down below, across from that Art Natural Food Store, and the other one up on the hill where the spring is at, and they say La Plaza Vieja. Who came up with that idea? Well, let me tell you that my name is John and I was very concerned that we were going to lose our identity to that area right there. I had been to ANU, and I started understanding that if we didn't do something about it, ANU was going to move in and wipe our existence out of sight. So I went through the city council. I'm an artist, and I drew a sign of what it would look like, say, La Plaza Vieja. They really loved it, but they said they would not accept it because the Pioneer Historical Society had to approve it. So eventually I went to them. They loved the idea, except one man. And he said, no, that's not old time. That's not only up on top of the hill for the spring of that. Well, I didn't want to argue with them, and I told them, so the entire area is La Plaza Vieja. That whole area. So this is who we are. By allowing this kind of thing, it's feeling taking away our culture, the flavor that we bring into that area of town, who we are, and now we're allowing other people to come in and tell us how we're going to live and who our neighbors are going to be, and how we will park or not park. Those types of things. It is sad when you see them. You might say, well, who is this idiot talking to us? I am a board member of the Pioneer Historical Museum. I'm a historian. I give historical tours downtown. Not only downtown, but throughout northern Arizona. Monument Valley, Grand Canyon, Canyon, all over. And so this is where I'm back to myself of saying that all of this has history. And we're allowing the history to go away from us if we allow people to come and build whatever they want, however they want. And don't take away what we already have. Those houses have a certain style. Don't make them change. Maybe repair them, yes, but don't make them change. So I hope you take that into account, that it is very upsetting to people that have always lived there. Right here, right there, right here. We've got old time families that are still around. And when we see these families just taking away who we are, it's very sad to see that happen. This church itself, we had lots of activities here. And we don't have that creator anymore. We've got very Mexican American, may I say. And now we don't have that. Or very little. So
Well, I totally agree with you.
So
My dad was Tom Hernandez, and he lived in
I
the
knew
Shopkins,
that.
he lived in the Shopkins.
I knew that well.
And he bought up there, and, you know, I have these people now that they developed up there, but upper lower Coconino and lower Coconino. And I have people come driving in my house driveway, cussing me out, or telling me stuff. I said, I've lived here my whole life.
Yeah.
I'm good. That's the kind of neighbors we get now when we develop stuff like that.
So it's upsetting to see these things happen. So just take into account who we are, what we are trying to preserve, not just sticks and stones and lighting and building, but our culture of society, who we are, the children that we can bring into that side of town. Let's keep it. Let's hold on to it. Let's not let it go. That's what I was trying to prevent with AMU moving in. That's why I made the sign. And if you don't think I made the sign, go behind that wooden sign and read the name of who made it. And then go up on the main screen of that, go and see who made that sign again. And this guy is coming to them up. Okay? So let's keep that into account. There's more than just buildings and sticks and stones and lines and streets, but the history of it and who we are. Let's preserve it.
My mom's gonna be 92 and she still lives up in their house. She's back. And still gardens her house and does everything else. She's just disappointed. She can't even see the church anymore. We live on the hill and you could see it all the time. You can't even see it because it's buildings all the time.
Thank you for that. It's really important. And yeah, we I think we need to keep that in mind that there's something special and important here that, you know, that outside design standards needs to, you know, be preserved about the community. And it's not just the buildings, the people. So, yeah, the buildings that people live in, you know, kind of defines all that. So, it sounds like we probably don't need to go through all these results too much in detail. I'll just look through it real quick and we can wrap up, and I'll stay around a little bit after the meeting too, if folks want to talk. Yep, looks like, not surprising, pretty much unacceptable across the board. So, and a couple of people not sure. So I really appreciate the feedback and your patience and all your comments tonight. Again, next steps are we'll hunker down with the city staff and start incorporating the feedback that we get from you and other stakeholders who may not be able to make it tonight. Start actually drafting the design standards. It sounds like I think we've got some great feedback on changing the direction we're going a little bit, be a little bit more flexible and, you know, try to ignore historical elements a little bit more than we were thinking. It'll take a few months to draft that and come back to another community meeting to talk about it more and what the more firm standards proposed are. And then we'll go through an adoption process with the various boards and commissions and city council and trying to wrap up towards the end of this year. So stay in touch. I think there was a sign up back there. And yeah, thanks again for all your time. And we're looking forward to working with you more on this.